Hello and welcome to another video at Prof. Paul B. Today we'll be looking at the async task in Android and how to use it to implement background processing in our Android apps. We know if you're watching this video, you know that there are certain things that you can't do in Android on the main UI thread. And one of these things is, for example, accessing, let's say, files on the network over the internet. You can't do that on the UI thread. And something else that is another threading rule in Android is all updating of the UI must be done on the UI thread. So without the async task, actually that could be quite of a challenge. You can implement it using Java threading techniques and Android handlers, but luckily Android has this built-in async task. It's an abstract class, actually, that we can extend and use in our applications to have a worker thread to do background tasks for us, but also have a mechanism to communicate information with the UI thread. So let's take a look at what this async task is. The async task is an abstract class, like I mentioned before. It comes with, there are 4 methods that we override. Actually, there's only one that we really have to override, and that's the doInBackground. Once we implement the doInBackground method, all the code within that method is actually running on a background thread, so it's not on the main UI thread. So that's the doInBackground is the one method that we must override if we are extending the async task class. However, it does come with 3 other callback methods that we can implement or override. The onPreExecute. So this onPreExecute actually is invoked on the UI thread, and it's used for any initializations required. Again, you don't have to do it. It comes in handy though. There's also onPostExecute. The onPostExecute basically also runs on the UI thread, and it's done after the background thread has completed its job, basically after the doInBackground method. And the result that comes in is the return statement from our doInBackground. We'll actually see this in the code in a few minutes. The last one that we can override on this chart is the onProgressUpdate. And we're going to see how that works. But this also runs on the UI thread, and it's as a result of publishProgress. So publishProgress is on the slide here, but that's not a method that we override. That's a method that we invoke within the doInBackground method to actually send messages to the UI thread to call the onProgressUpdate. So we're going to see in the doInBackground, we're going to invoke the publishProgress, and basically that sends a message to the UI thread, and it also sends information to the UI thread. And we're going to see what this progress. This could be any. It could be it's a var args. It could be integer, double, string, student. If you're passing classes around. It could be anything. So actually, it's an array of different types. So let's take a look. I do have another slide that has it a little bit more visual. If we take a look at the diagram, let me just make it a little bit bigger here so we can see. Okay, so we see this on this diagram. The red box represents the UI thread. So all of the code within here, it actually runs on the UI thread. So we see here's our activity code, and here's our async task code. And when our activity creates an instance of our async task and calls the execute method, again, we're going to see this in a second. That actually, the first thing that happens on the UI thread, the onPreExecute method is invoked if we've overridden it. And once that is done, the doInBackground method is invoked. And notice now we're going outside of the UI thread. Now a worker thread is actually spawned, and we do all of our work, our long running task on the worker thread. But what it does is, what we can do, I should say, is we can actually call the publishProgress method, and that will send a message to our UI thread, and this message will be received once it's processed by the thread, will be received by the onProgressUpdate. And the onProgressUpdate, we can, because it's on the UI thread, we can update the UI. And then we can continue our task. We can call this publishProgress as often as we want, as often as we need. However, once the doInBackground method is finished running, then the return value of doInBackground goes back and it returns to the onPostExecute, which is on the UI thread. So again, we can access the UI from the onPostExecute. So that's basically in a nutshell how the async task works. These methods it's really great because again, you can do some initialization, and even while you're doing your long running task, you can publish some progress, and at the end you also have somewhere where you can add code to do some finalization. The one thing with the async task is if you look at the declaration up here, we have private async task extends, sorry, private class my task extends async task, and we have params, progress, and results. This is the diamond operator you may recall from generics. Recall creating an array list of string, or an array list of student, or an array list of whatever type. We can use generics, and this is exactly what that is. The first component, which is the params, here we see that this is the parameter type that's passed into the class when we invoke the execute method, and it's passed in as an array of type params, and it's passed in to the doInBackground method. So what does that mean, an array of type params? Well, this, again, like I say, this could be strings. The only thing it can't be is it can't be a primitive type. So if you're using primitive types, it would be like integer or double, capital D. Those are the classes that would be used. And with Java's auto boxing and unboxing, we don't really have to worry about that too much. The second one, oops, sorry about that. Let me go back to the previous one. Oops, oops, oops. Okay, and the second one is the progress. So this is the type of information that's passed when we call the when we call the publish progress, and what type of information do we pass to the on progress update. So again, we'll see that in a second. And results, that's simply the return value of the doInBackground that's going into the on post execute. Okay, so that's how it works. At first glance, it's a little bit weird, but it doesn't take long to get used to it and to see the power of it. So let's take a look at implementing that. Okay, but before we do, we'll take a look at the project that we have here. It's a very simple Android app, and what we're doing is we're just simulating downloading files. And if you take a look at the code here, this is what I want to do. Okay, I want to enter a number. Here, let me just enter 3. I want to enter a number, I want to click go, and I want to simulate downloading 3 files. So this is what I want to do. I want to txt display is this text view right here. Right, currently it says no files processed. So what I want to do, I want to click on the go button, and here's the event handler, is this go method. And I want to display started the simulation, and I want to go into a for loop. I want to have the thread sleep for 3 seconds, and then I want to display 1 file process, 2 files process. I know it's going to say 1 files. It's not the best, but anyway, this is just as an example. And after we're done, so we want to display some progress information. And after we're done, we want to actually display that we're done processing however number of files that the user entered here. So so that's what I want to do. Seems very simple. Let's go ahead and try this. And I'm going to click on go, and let's see how this goes. So the first thing this is what I want. I want to see started the simulation. Then I want to see every 3 seconds that 1 file, 2 file, 3 file. And at the end, I want to see done processing 3 files. So let's go ahead and click go. And all of a sudden, what's happening is we notice that the cursor is not moving anymore. The go button didn't come back up. We just got the done processing 3 files. We did not see started the simulation. We didn't see these interim messages at all, and all we saw was this done processing. at the end. And let's do the example one more time, but this time let's click on go and let's try to interact with the app a little bit. I'm going to click go. I'm going to try to enter more information in the edit text. I'll try to click go again. And now all of a sudden I get this dreaded ANR, which is the application not responding dialog. And I don't know about you, if I see an app, I install an app and I get this message, typically I'm not too happy. And it has to be a really good reason for me to click on wait. Typically I'll click on yeah, close it. It's locking up my phone. I don't want it. But and so that's what you don't want, right? You don't want your app to do this. So I'm just going to click on wait, and right now it's done processing the 3 files. Okay, so what we want to do is we want the UI to remain responsive while we're downloading our files and quotations. So let's go ahead and implement an async task that's going to help us do that. Typically, it's not the only way to do it, but typically you would implement this as a private class, inner class actually, and I'm just going to call it my task, and we're going to extend async task. And here again we have we're going to use our diamond operator, and we have the params. So what's going to be coming in? Well, we see that we're going to have this integer that determines how many files that we want to process. So I'm just going to write down here integer as the first parameter. Our second parameter is, if we take a look, the second thing we want to do is we want to send progress information. So we could do two things. We could either send a string, or we can send an integer. So this is where we're at right now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send the integer. And finally, at the end, remember on the onPostExecute, we will receive a type, and since this is the return value, this one I'm just going to show how we can use different things. I'm going to put a string. One thing of note, all of these, the first two parameters, they correspond to var args, so these are variable length arguments. These will actually come in as arrays. So this will be an array of integers, another array of integers. However, so the last parameter is not an array. This is the return value of the doInBackground, and it comes in as a single parameter in the onPostExecute. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. We're going to see all this in motion. And let's see if the IDE is going to help me. Yes, it will. And let's go ahead and implement the methods because, as you recall, AsyncTask is abstract. But you'll notice there's only one method that is also abstract, and there's only one method that you have to implement, and that's the doInBackground. So let's go ahead and click OK. So now we have our async task, and we have our doInBackground method. So let me go ahead and, so what do I want to do within my doInBackground? I want to basically use this for loop, right? So let me just go ahead and I'm going to do Control X, and I'm going to do Control V. So now I have my for loop is inside this doInBackground, and remember the doInBackground, you can pause, go back into the session, or actually here I can just bring this up right here. Just hold on for 1 second. If we take a look at our, sorry, that was a bit fast. If we take a look at our diagram here, that the doInBackground is the one method that's being done on the worker thread. Okay. Let's go. So now let's fix things up. There are some things that it doesn't like so much anymore. So now the doInBackground again. So this is of our args called integers actually. I want to pass in how many files that I'm in quotations, of course, that I want to download, and this comes in as an array. So it's going to be an array currently of just one element. So how do I access the first element of an array of one element is using the index 0. Okay, so that's done. But now I also have this txt display must be called from the UI threads, even the IDE now. This is new to recent couple versions of Android Studio. Now it actually tells you, which is great. So we can't actually display set the text in a worker thread. So I'm just going to comment that out for now. So now we have our doInBackground, and we have our, basically we're going to be doing the sleep within here. So you know what, I can, there is something else that is not compiling. Let me just see. Oh, missing a return statement. Okay, so for now, let's just go ahead and return null. And let's go ahead and run it. I just want to run it just to see. And let's put the number of files to 3. Click on go. And done processing 3 files already. Oh, well, you know what? We never created an instance of it. We didn't do too much with it. Okay, so let's go ahead. And I'm actually going to create it. This is how we create an instance of it. And we're doing my task. My task equals new, and new what? My task. And I'm going to do my task dot execute. And I'm going to pass in this num files. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start that up. And we're going to try 3. Did I write 3? Yeah, I wrote 3 here. Okay, so let's go ahead and write 3. Click on go, and we still see the by. Okay, so what's happening now is we started the simulation, we started the background task, but notice we're actually displaying the text right after. So that tells us, actually that tells us that calling this method, we don't really see what's happening in the background, but calling this method started a background thread, and this method call was asynchronous. So our code returned immediately. So let's go ahead. So right now there's not much to see. Let's go ahead and continue. So right now what we want to do is, so we have our doInBackground method. You know what? I do have these here. I do have the started, and I do have the finished. But what I'd like to do, and we saw the finish got executed, got displayed before the task was actually finished. So let's go ahead and move that one first into our async task. And remember, we're going to put this in the onPostExecute method. And so I'm just going to start writing onPostExecute. And oops, that was onPreExecute. We're actually going to be using that one, but for now, let's do the onPostExecute. And now we're expecting, what are we expecting? That corresponds to the last parameter in the diamond operator of our async task declaration. So it's expecting in this case, a string. And I'm just going to call this message for now. Again, it's just a variable name. We do not need to call the superclasses implementation. And all we're going to do is I'm going to move this one line of code, because that's when we're done. We want to implement that in the onPostExecute. There we go. But now we don't need to concatenate this anymore. What we're going to do is we're just going to display the message. We're going to have to actually build the message. So let me just go and actually, before I copy that, I'm going to just cut, because right now that message is going to be the return statement of the doInBackground. Right now we're returning null, so we're actually going to return that. And remember, now it's not num files anymore. We have to use the same as we did here. This is the first element of the var args array, and I'm just going to do Control C. Again, this could be better with a string.format, but right now we're just doing this nice and quick. And I'm going to copy over the message, and now I'm going to set the text to be that message. So let's stop this and let's run it. I guess I could have just reran. And let me go ahead and put 3. And now I will started the simulation was done. So and we're waiting three times 3 seconds, so it should be about 9 seconds. And see, now we're done processing the 3 files. So what I'd like to do now is we notice we don't really have to put this on the onPreExecute, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyways because I want to. This is an example about the async task, and I want to show you as much as possible. So on the pre-execute, I'm just going to copy this our initialization message, and I'm going to paste it here. Again, we don't need to call the superclasses implementation in this particular instance. Okay. And I'm going to remove some of these dead space just to make it look a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so far, so now the onPreExecute is going to display the that we're starting the simulation. onPostExecute is going to display the message that we that the doInBackground is passing. And now the one thing that's missing is the progress. We want that progress information. Basically, is we want to do this, which we can't do here because this isn't a background thread. So recall, let's go back to the declaration of, okay, so here recall, we're actually going to be passing, remember, the second parameter in the diamond operator corresponds to the value that is passed in the publishProgress and that is received in the onProgressUpdate within the, here, let me just bring this over. So the second parameter in the diamond operator corresponds to the value that's passed from the publishProgress into the onProgressUpdate back on our UI thread. So let's go ahead and do that. So now what we're going to be sending is we're just going to be sending I+1. So let me go ahead and do that. publishProgress, and I'm just going to pass in, oops, not capital I+1. Okay. So we can do this, we can run this. Android IDE is not going to complain that we don't have the onProgressUpdate, but it won't do anything. So we have to override the onProgressUpdate. And again, we don't have to worry about the superclasses implementation. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to display, here, let me go ahead and copy this over. Control C. And what we're going to, but now it's no longer I+1. Right now it's going to be values. Remember this, this is also an array in values of 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and try. So I'm going to put 3 for the number of times, and I'm going to click on go. So now we see our started, the simulation is up, and we are getting progress information. 1 file sounds weird, sorry, but 2 files. So we get our progress information, and now we have our done processing 3 files. So now we see, and if we do it again, notice how the UI thread is still responsive. So that's exactly what we want. That's about it. I do want to show you one last thing though, is that here when we're passing in the execute, I'm passing in the number of files. But remember, so this corresponds to the first element of the diamond operator, but this is a var args, so I can actually pass in more than one, and I want to show you that. And so right now I'm going to pass in 4,000. So I'm just going to, that really is the number of seconds or number of milliseconds in this case. But how do I access that in the doInBackground is now I want to access the second element of the array, and I want to put that as my parameter for the sleep. So the first element was integer 0. The second element would be integers 1. So now if we try this, now we have 2 parameters passing in. We could also create an array of integer and pass in the array, but the nice thing with the var args is we can pass in any number of parameters as long as they're integer. The runtime is actually going to create an array and pass that array into the doInBackground. Similar with the publishProgress and the onProgressUpdate. However, the onPostExecute is not a var arg, it's a simple, in this case, string. So let's go ahead and try this, make sure it works. So now it should be waiting a little bit longer between. so we can see that it does take a little bit longer. Okay, so that's the video. I hope AsyncTask, I hope I managed to clear up a few things on AsyncTask. It's a great tool, great class to work with. There is a caveat. If you're using it like I've done here, then if your activity is, or if your device is rotated and your activity is killed, then your doInBackground can get lost as well. So, I should say a reference to your async task would be lost as well. There are ways of around this, creating, for example, a headless fragment and implementing the async task within that. That's perhaps it could be another video, or you could also use an intent service, which is another great tool to offload processing off of the UI thread. So that's the video for today, and hope you enjoyed it. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and have a great day.